go ahead and get started. I just wanted to say thanks to everybody for coming tonight, and I hope that you all have some great questions for our amazing panelists that we have. Just a quick intro for them. I have Sandra has a total of 17 years of board experience at 4 different curling clubs. Sorry, I had to rearrange some things on my screen so I can see everybody. And including both arena clubs and dedicated ice clubs. She was chair of the USA Curling Arena Advisory Board, so she has a lot of experience both as an arena curler and a dedicated curler. Don is the founder of the Traverse City Curling Club, which opened their dedicated ice doors in 2023, and since then they've gone from about 120 members to over 400 members. He is also the co-founder of Positive Ice, a podcast aimed to create a concentrated forum of ideas and opportunities for curling clubs looking to make a better impact on their community through curling. And then Brad is, last but not least, the president of the Curl Vegas Club. It's a new club that was established in 2020 with the sole purpose to bring dedicated curling to Las Vegas. And they threw their first stones on dedicated ice this past April, just a couple of months ago. So with that, I will turn it over to our panelists if they want to do a quick introduction or add anything to that for themselves, and then we can just go ahead and get started diving into questions. Sandra, do you want to go first?
Sure. So
kind of put you on the spot.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm actually going to bring up that one slide that I talked to you about before. Okay, so if I go to view, and then I will just show this. I actually was part of an arena curling presentation, and I see Jane's on here. Hi, Jane. And that was back in September of 2023. Can you see my screen there? And this was one of the slides that seemed to generate a lot of conversation about, but so I have been a part of curling clubs for decades and crazy enough to be on a board of directors for 17 years, and that's dedicated. So I went from a very large Canadian dedicated ice curling club with a full staff to a startup Pittsburgh arena club. Like startup, we had like maybe 20, 30 people going at the Island Sports Center in Pittsburgh. So it was kind of like the surreal life going from the dedicated ice with programs and full-time ice staff and everything to we're dragging our rocks out on the ice and drawing our houses on the circle. So went from there to the Potomac Curling Club, which was had just moved from arena ice for like 40 or 50 years. They were in an arena club to dedicated ice for they had been in there for a couple of years, and then to the Dakota Club, which moved from arena ice to dedicated ice while I was on the board there. So I have seen a lot of different phases of curling clubs, and that's all I have to say right now.
Brad, do you have anything to add?
No, I'm just looking at Sandra's slide there, and I think it hits a lot of good topics, which hopefully we'll get to today. But having just gone to dedicated ice recently, I have to say we really do miss dragging rocks out and setting up scoreboards and putting in the hacks. Not.
And Don?
Well, I don't know what to say. I other than to say that the process to go from an idea to a dedicated facility took what appeared to be 9 years in time, but the reality was it was about 12 years prior to that ideas flowed, and how do we make this happen? And looking in retrospect, particularly over the last year and a half since we opened the doors and a little time to breathe, and then also looking at the clubs that do well whether it's on this side of the border or the north side of the border. They do community well. And when community is done well, it is attractive to anybody in that community, whether they know what you're doing or not. They want to see what's going on over there. What's all those people doing in the parking lot or whatever? And I think from a standpoint of helping clubs move to the next level, whatever that level is, community building and being intentional about that, how we do that, and what are the strategies for that are critical. To have a place where people can go and curl and build a facility, that's kind of a nuts and bolts process. To build a club that can be vibrant and impact the community, that needs to be intentional. And so that's what I think I bring, looking retrospectively, that's what I bring to this community at large, but certainly to the community in Northern Michigan.
Okay, so we can go ahead and get started. If anybody has questions, you can put them in the chat, or you can just shout them out. If there's a lot of conversation going, we can raise hands and stuff and call on people, but otherwise just ask away.
Nobody wants to be first. This is Justin McBride from Orange County Curling. We're in the process now of building our case to move to our own dedicated facility. I guess kind of a softball first question to get everybody talking is, what USA curling resources are out there that we should know about if we don't know about them already?
So I guess I'll take a stab at this one. Kind of the biggest thing that we have right now is our house platform. If you haven't heard of that, it's our digital content platform. We have lots of digital resources, exclusive member content on there. And so we have building plans and fundraising plans, financial plans from other clubs that have made this transition to dedicated ice. We're always adding more content there. Unfortunately, we don't have like a specific how-to because every club situation is so different. But we're hoping that providing those resources can at least give clubs some ideas and some resources for people to talk to and reach out to if they have more questions.
Good.
We also have
too, yeah.
Sorry. We also have things like rock loan programs and stuff, so it's not all just paper.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
And
Sandra.
I think we have Jane on here too, who chairs the arena. Is it called a development program, Jane?
It's an arena working group.
Arena working group.
Right, and we have representation from most, if not all, of the regions. One thing I found out from being involved is that every region is very different in how they do things, and it's great to learn from each other. I think that's one of the things that Dawn's working on, is just trying to put together information from a lot of different people about how they do things and then how you can adapt it to your own situation. So I know in the last year I've been going out and visiting, I've kind of been intentionally choosing bonspiels that are at clubs that have gone from arena to dedicated. So that's been an interesting thing as well. So as I go out traveling around, I've been to Kansas City and Bowling Green and visited Cincinnati. Just trying to go out and then bug the people that are there to tell me all they've learned. So, and then whenever I go to other spiels, I talk to people. So that's kind of been my path to try and learn more. But the group is doing lots of different things. So thanks for the shout out, Sandra.
So we have a question in the chat that I think each of you can probably give your own takes on it, but the question is, how did everyone ramp up membership, revenue, and volunteers after opening, and how long did it take to become financially sustainable?
I'll take a crack at that one to get it going here. Uh, we started uh, we started the club with probably a 3-month effort within the community to communicate that curling was coming. Um, so that our very first event, our first Learn to Curl, had over 500 people at it. And we were ready to engage them, to plug them in right away. So the following year, we were no, we were solvent. I mean, we were making money. So the I think this goes back then to the relationship thing, because what happened was the people just didn't come and curl and walk away. They were engaged. They were befriended. They were, you know, the critical disciples, the 12 people that you need to have to make this happen around you have to be people person. They have to be people that love people. They have to be people that nurture people. They have to be people not afraid to talk, not afraid to go up and talk to strangers. And we had the dozen, and those dozen people nurtured these people. So they felt cared for, heard, loved, and seen. So volunteering was just the next natural thing to do. Hey, we need some help. We have this Learn to Curl coming. Oh, that's what we do. Okay. So it's from a brand new place, it's really easy to do. I'm not easy. It's easier to do than to redirect something and some organizations. So it didn't take long afterwards where we were starting to bank cash. Hope that answered.
Yeah, I would say we did something similar to what Don described. We're on a shorter timeline than you've been, since we've just been dedicated for about 2 or 2.5 months. And so the short answer to the question is we're not there yet. But our forecasts showed us to not be there yet. So we're not worried about that. But to your point, Don, we had a pretty heavy PR campaign a couple of months before we opened, announcing the facility, getting the community excited about it. We got a ton of press. All the TV stations came out to our grand opening. And then we had an open house that same week. So we followed up the grand opening with an open house, and they all came to that also. So a lot of press coverage helped a lot, got a lot of people here. And the nice thing is we're now able, with the dedicated ice, to actually schedule sessions where we can engage people and then follow up with them. Whereas before in the arena, we've got one night a week if we were lucky. And even if we got them interested at Learn to Curl, we wasn't a lot we could do with them, except throw them into a league if they were willing to do that. So I think the PR aspect is really important to help start the engagement.
Yeah, and to that end, Brad, what I would add is it's the PR is a personal relations, and not just yelling and not just speaking out and saying words, but having communication, engagement, relationship. So to that end, I think one of the strategies when we found key people in our community, we identified a list of probably 100 key people. If we can get that person in the door, they can make a massive impact on our club. Whether they participate in curling in our club or not, they got a big mouth and they swing a big stick. They influence people. So we got those people in, and sometimes it was just, hey, come on upstairs here in the arena here, and you got to watch us curling while I feed you a beer. And that's what we did. And so, you know, the interesting thing about our game is we have this novelty factor that we can use to our advantage. And we can either use it to our advantage or try to teach people how to curl. And that's not what they just want to know what it is first before we start to kind of make them do it. And I think that was it. We slowed that process down. Once we were in the arena, we had people will catch on right away. But I think having real face-to-face sit-down conversations with people is important. Really identify those people in your community that can make an impact. And that took a whole bunch of people to sit down and say, who do we want to be in here, to come in here? And sometimes these were wild hair. There's no way we're getting that guy to come into the hockey arena at 8:30 at night. But he did. And, you know, it just took time. And it turns out he was really good. He's not a curler, but he's really good at finding money. And the people that we don't know, he knows they have money. And there was a question in here about how much money we had. I have no idea. But I can tell you this. Two of those people that sat in those conversations in the stands before we had dedicated ice were the ones that helped us find the money.
If we have the questions are rolling in now.
Yeah, they are. So
the floodgates are open. So there's one question, and I'll try to get to all of them, but one that has come up quite a bit from Fran that I've seen at a lot of clubs are really struggling with this is what have you found to be the biggest hurdles in finding a space, especially if you're renting? And it seems like renting is going to be more and more the direction that the clubs are going when they're opening a new facility.
I would say one of the biggest hurdles we ran into was the landlord permitting the use that we were proposing. So we got tired of, no, we don't want ice in here as an answer. And we had to do a couple of things. We had to educate our real estate agent, our commercial agent, on what exactly we were doing, because he was basically just calling the other agent saying, here's what my client wants to do. That gets passed to the landlord. They go, no, because they don't really have the details or really understand who we are. So to Don's point, you know, one of the things we did was, first of all, we explained what we were going to do. We had a video that showed, you know, the ice mats are going to go down. They're completely removable. We're not going to damage anything. There's very little water involved when it comes right down to it. And we're a good group of people. We're not going to have all kinds of rowdy parties going on. Curling people are good people. And so educating our agent on that, and then telling him that you've got to not just say, you know, we want to put ice in for curling, because they're not going to know and they're just going to say no. Our market is particularly hot, so they have that option to turn us down. Once we did that, things started to change a little bit, and over a period of 2 to 3 months, we started getting some good opportunities in buildings. And they didn't always work, but that was one hurdle. The other hurdle was just the physical dimensions. There's so much that will make it not work. Like, it's not long enough, it's not wide enough, the posts are in the wrong place, maybe the area is not so great, and you've got to consider all of those things, or even the rent's too high. But I think before you ever get to that point, you've got to have a really good budget, revenue and expense projections, because that'll drive a lot of all of these things that you have to consider. Your building, your loans, your fundraising. Everybody's going to want to know what your projections are and have them be realistic and well thought out. So I know that's off on a different tangent, but it kind of plays.
No, I think that's definitely something that I think this group will probably want to hear more about. Like, how do you build these accurate financial forecasts and membership forecasts? Like, where do you start for that?
Oh, they're strictly guesses, Lauren. Yeah, I mean, if you've got people within your club that are, you know, good with Excel, you can certainly build, but they got to be detailed and they have to be realistic. You know, you've got to figure out how many people realistically can we get through here? What can we realistically charge for the leagues? It may or may not be the same as you're doing at the arena, but now you're doing it daily. You've got to figure out your bond spill numbers, your learn to curl numbers. In our case, the majority of the revenue is projected to come from leagues. Bond spills and learn to curls and all those other things are fine and needed, but leagues, from our projections, the way we were operating, is the major portion of the revenue. And those models are out there. I know we built our own from the ground up, but I've seen others that are out there. Give you an idea.
So that kind of, I think, moves nicely into our next question, which was, or one of the next questions, which was, how much of your how much of your funding was cash in hand fundraising versus loans and grants? Sandra, do you want to start with you on that one?
There's a lot of different ways to do that. You know, I've seen it. We had one club that they, you know, had their business plan and it had a certain number, like what Brad was talking, it was very detailed. And then it came to the fact that when they went to get a liquor license, they actually were denied one, which kind of blew their business plan out of the water. So they had to find other sources of revenue, which there were some, they got a loan from a club member, like an actual personal mortgage that was from a club member. It was sort of a ramped up payment plan to give the club an opportunity to build its membership and its revenue that way. There are different grants. You know, sometimes communities, they do things like they're going to build a sports complex and you can kind of piggyback on as part of that project, even with a small, you know, 2 or 3 sheets to start with. You can go to existing arenas and ask if you can, if there's space, if you can add on. And sometimes communities will, you know, contribute to the project even as a grant, or, you know, if you can do some fundraising to do that. But I know Potomac started out as an add-on to, I forget the name of the arena now, Garden Ice House. But then, so it's on parkland, so the lease is only $1 a year, so they're not paying for the land. They had shared restrooms, and to start with, they shared the generator or the compressor with the hockey arena, and then they eventually got their own. So there's all kinds of sort of Lego type projects that you can sort of build your way into these things. But it all actually depends too on that you are actually adding to your numbers and your volunteers, and by building the programs. You have to be careful that you don't sort of extend yourself into a space and not have at least the beginnings of some programs with some expertise coming into it, because it's really easy to burn your people out. It can come down to the same, like 15, 20 people, maybe even less than that, doing a lot of the work, unless there's a lot of different programs. You know, you can have youth, junior, even college programs in an arena, and then move that expertise into a dedicated building so that you can hit the ground running. Does that help at all? I'm just gonna share a thing too. One of the things that I found that kind of helped us when we were sort of trying to develop our numbers was we split the organization into a warm side of the glass and cold side of the glass. And then we made sure that we put effort into both those areas. So it can be really easy to get focused on just only on one side. But like if you go that you're on the cold side of the glass, which is your ice and your ice surface and your rocks, that you were going to focus on developing ice making, you know, accumulating equipment, including your rocks and stuff. This actually adds to your assets and your bottom line. developing routines and training volunteers and that sort of expertise. And then if you go into the warm side of the glass, this is where you get into the management and the building of the club. So that's where your PR and your marketing is. You would build your databases and like what Don was saying, where, you know, when people come, a lot of times we used to call them tire kickers, right? They wanted to come in and touch a curling rock. Sometimes they're going to join your club, but most people have to step their way into membership. So they might come for a learn to curl, and then maybe they come for another lesson or a package of 3 lessons or 5 lessons, and they step their way into membership that way. So you have to have a whole slate of different introductory events and the expertise and the volunteer manpower to run those events. I think that development of a league schedule, maybe even one that leads into sort of a little club championship, is a great way to build loyalty and fun into the club. And along the way, you're developing your organizational infrastructure. So.
Sorry, I'm still trying to catch up on some of the questions. Sorry, thank you for that, Sandra. And I think another one in here that Philip asked that is, I think, really hopefully of interest is he was asking about thoughts on getting local data, and is there local market data, and is there enough real data to rely on for pro forma that assumes tight margins? I guess, Brad, do you have anything on
I'm
that
not
one?
sure I fully understood what was the question.
The question is thoughts on getting local market data that is real enough to rely on for a pro forma that assumes tight margins. So I think if you're looking for local data, like how can you inform those forecasts? Where can you look for, what kind of memberships you might be able to expect in your local community? Are there resources out there that help clubs with that?
Yeah, I found there wasn't a lot for that.
Okay.
I mean, we're in a metro area that's probably 2 million people. So we tried to do some projections that showed if we get X percent of, X percent of this population and X percent of that population. But I think in the end, those numbers were, maybe they helped a couple of the banks that were looking at us to at least realize we were trying to figure out something credible. You can almost go the other direction, because and I don't know if it's just anecdotal, but pretty much you hear when people go dedicated, membership, let's say, doubles after year 1, and then goes another 50% after year 2, or something along those lines, whatever the numbers are. I think those are probably as good to count on as trying to figure out from your population, how many people might come. There's so many different segments to the population, and you're really just guessing. And I guess you can say, it's going to be mostly adults, or, it's going to be X amount of youth and this and that. But I never found a good way to break that down that I felt comfortable with. Not that there's anything wrong with doing that, but the data sources were pretty minimal for us, at least. And it could be I just wasn't looking in the right place. But.
So once you, there's another question that is maybe more towards once you're actually open, but are there any dedicated clubs running on a subscription model where members pay one fee for a certain amount of curling, or is it mostly paying per league? What have you guys found to be successful in these new formative years?
I can address that. So we when we moved from the arena to our dedicated facility, up to this point, we've continued to use the same model. We start memberships renew automatically. So when people sign up to become a member of the club, it tells them right in there that this will renew automatically unless you let us know something different. So their $125 a year membership will renew. When they sign up for leagues, like a fall league, a 6-week fall league. They pay for that at that time. What we're moving toward is two types of opportunities, or give people choices on how to do that. Because what would happen was people would sign up in, late September, early, something like that, to play in our fall league. And 6 weeks later, we're signing up for winter league, and that's twice as long as the fall league. So they have a kind of a big nut, and then all winter, all summer, they don't pay a damn thing. So what we're looking at doing is saying, hey, you can do it this way, or you can do it this way. If you're going to play in each of the leagues, you're going to play in the fall, winter, and spring, this is what it's going to cost, and we'll break it down for you. It's going to be whatever it is a month, and that'll just go. And I think that's going to take away, at least in our experience at this point, the more we can get to that, the way better it's going to be to run this club. Much like a golf club, it doesn't really matter how many times you go out and play golf. You have your a la carte fee, or if you want to take a card out there, maybe, but you just play. And hopefully we'll run into the big problem, which is the best problem. We don't have enough space. And when that happens, we find another spot and keep going. That's the whole goal, right? So anyway, I hope that helps with that thing. We just let them know right up front, your membership fee will renew automatically.
Brad and Sandra, is that a similar approach to what you guys have done at your clubs, or do you have a different?
Yeah, ours is pretty straightforward. I mean, there's a membership which is pretty modest, and then it's paid by league. The subscription model we looked at briefly, but it really didn't work in terms of our projections. And we have a lot of, I don't know if transient's the right word, but people in and out up here a lot, and traveling, and that just needing to pay as they use, I think, was the bottom line. So, they'll join a league one time, then they might not join the next one because they're going to be traveling, and then they'll join again. So that's the way we work it.
Yeah. I've seen it both ways, where like people will pay a flat rate for basically however much they want to curl, versus paying per league, like a membership, and then per league. And I do think that the paying per league is better, because I would say that like 75 or 80% of our members were like literally curling in one league. And so there's a fairness aspect to it. So if they want to pay per league, then they get a chance to, they can pay per 1 or 2 leagues. And maybe you say, okay, so if you plan on playing in 3 or more leagues, you could pay this price, right? And that's your unlimited, or however much you want to curl. And then if you don't plan on playing in 3 or more leagues, then you would pay per league. So that would be another way to do it.
Yeah,
We have a request to revisit a previous question. If Brad and Don can chime in on the cash in hand versus loans discussion.
Yeah, our funding was probably 80% loans, and I guess 20% would be more of the donations and grants and those other types of things. And really, the loan part of it started with a member loan program as kind of the core. We did a couple of things there we actually had a brochure. We had incentives for the loans. And that was a big piece of the loan amounts that we got. We also solicited curling organizations. And probably the last people that we solicited were banks and institutions, and SBA type small business development corp. And frankly, we didn't get much out of those. So the majority was member loans and curling or curling related organization type loans. The funding that I just sort of label those as you either pay it back or you get to keep it type of numbers. The contributors for the 20% were, again, members. And again, there were incentives for them. There were specific programs that we had. If you do this, we'll, make you a lifetime member, for example, would be the high end of that. But the curling community also were big contributors for us and donators. Grants, not so much. Grants, we found were kind of a waste of time at this point, because if we didn't have a program up and running, the people providing the grant weren't really interested. They want to see a program and fund that program, as opposed to funding a proposed program. So it's a little bit of chicken and egg there. And those will be things we'll pursue after we get going here. But yeah, I'd say about 80% to 20% for us.
I have to say that when it comes to what was happening in our club through this process, I really don't have a great sense on that money thing. I will say that my part was developing relationships and getting people into what we did have in an arena place and sitting down, having a cup of coffee or cold beer and talking about it. It was those people that went out and did the work for us. So we got them dipped. They had the connections to the people that would see the value of curling in our community, the not the value of playing curling, but the value of the game and what it meant in our community: civility, respect. And talk about takeouts, and we didn't talk about, I mean, that's what we talked about, the ethos of the game. So I do know this, that once we got a few people who knew people like the Dow Foundation to throw some money into the thing, then people wanted, what can we do? So it ends up, for us, it ended up being, let's get the right people in the room to get excited about this. All right. When those people said, I'll help you guys out, what are your members doing? Then we asked the members, and here's why we want you to do it. And the members said, well, this makes perfect sense. Now, if these guys are going to help us out and then we got to throw a few $1,000 into this thing, I'm in. And that's kind of how we got the member side of the thing happening. The folks that contributed to this thing were interested once they saw that the members would put whatever they could put up. I hope that helps.
And that's a good point, Don. We had a similar experience, maybe a little bit reversed, but it was really important for us to have a good chunk of money from the members before we went to people like banks, for example, because they wanted to know that the members were invested in this and supporting it. We actually had a couple of conversations early on with banks, and when they found out that we didn't have that money basically raised yet, they said, come back when you can show us that you've got people behind you. And the people they were looking for were our members. Yeah. So I think that's really important to get that done early on.
And what was interesting in those conversations, the question was never how much did they donate, how much did they pledge. It was what was the percentage of the members that pledged. They didn't ask what the number was, which I thought was okay. That's a legit, we had 75-80% of our members at that time, before it went from the, going from arena to dedicated, it's 120 people or something like that. 80% of them had some skin in the game.
And Lauren, I just saw a question come up that relates right to this. So our budget was $1 million to do this project. We got the answer. Somebody had asked about how much is a good chunk. So we had a goal of $300,000 for member loans before we would really start to get moving, and we ended up doing 305,000. So that was the chunk that we needed to show that we had support.
And I think that kind of touches on another question that Nick Myers had, that he was saying, I believe when we asked the question about funding, most of us are looking at a number. What would be a reasonable amount of money for clubs to be looking for to transition from arena to dedicated? I imagine the answer to that is probably going to be very based on what market you're in.
Sure.
But if you guys have anything, I mean, other than what market, how do you, so based on your market, how would you expect the cost of your club? Do you have an idea of how you expect the cost of your club to scale compared to, is there like a cost of living or other metric that you can use to kind of get a ballpark idea? I mean, land prices is probably one, but.
I mean, for me and us, you really don't know the number until you find a space that's potential and have somebody say, here's what it's going to take to, build it out, which means, and this, I guess, was probably our naivety, but we actually had to go get an architect, which we didn't want to pay for. But the contractors wouldn't talk to us without the architect laying out some details. So that was an extra expense, but very valuable in the long run, of course. I don't think there's any way to really know, except, some people throw out numbers per sheet. And that seems to maybe sort of help. We have a 4-sheet club and the budget was $1 million. We actually came in a little bit under the $1 million. So that might be one way to look at it, 250 per sheet. I don't think that's an unusual number. I don't know what you guys ended up doing, Dawn or Jane, but.
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad about this. I'm not prepared with those types of. Sound like a guy that's ready to go have a debate tonight, but
That's okay. You guys are all here for different things, so.
But I've got these notes down, and I will come more prepared next time with some of this stuff. I will say that one of the things that happened for us when they started to see the contractors that we looked at, of course, an architect was in on this thing from the get-go. And that is a huge, I don't want to, our architect was, my niece, and I don't want to blow her horn, but she spent probably 5 years studying the dynamics of building something, specifically for curling, and has incredible wisdom in that. But at the end of the day, when we sat down with the contractor to figure out what this was, the contractor said, this is going to be our project. And we pick one project a year, where basically they throw in $500,000 of their fees. And that's that's a national company, regional company, and that's what they did. So, we didn't expect that, but that's what ended up happening. Yeah. So
I think too that those have, like, there has to be a group of people, a handful of people from every club that's actually out there looking for these opportunities, because unless you're looking for them, you're not gonna come across them. Sometimes you're just in the right place at the right time, but you're never going to find them if you don't have an idea of what you're trying to accomplish, and you have people out there looking for these things, looking at properties, scouring the community news, maybe getting in touch with your city council members or your, state representatives somehow, like just getting out there, talking to people, getting contacts, and you never know what's going to cross your path, and you could just be in the right place at the right time. That's a lot of clubs, actually, that happens to them.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think the most important capital we can invest in is our relationship capital. If we have really deep relationship capital, the community will help you figure out a way to make this happen. But it has to be real.
I've got another question. Somebody wanted to know, Don, you said that you had a 500-person Learn to Curl. Do you have
Oh, yeah.
details that you'd want to share on how you
yeah,
got those people in the door?
This was our very first event held in an arena. It was Give It a Curl. And we promoted this thing for probably 2 months before it happened. Charged, this was the seed money. This was $15 a head to come out onto the ice. And we had a station. They walk in one door of the rink and grab a rock, slide a little, grab another rock, slide a little, We, all with like only one person knew anything about curling. The rest of us just sort of and they just went kind of a maze up and down the ice, and at the end threw 2 rocks and walked off. They might have been on the ice for 10 minutes. On the way out, they passed our table where we said, we're signing up for leagues and Learn to Curl, take a full Learn to Curl. And we had them all filled up. I mean, we had 2 weeks filled up at the end of that day. So I'm happy to share the details of that, how that event went. And one of the sheets was dedicated to having a game going the entire time. So we had 4 sheets on the ice, and there was a game happening all the time that was being color commentary by one of the local radio guys who didn't know a damn thing about curling, but everybody knows who he is. He's talking about, oh, look at that one. He hit a basher or whatever, well, that's a home run. It went right out of the whole thing. They had no idea, but they were all having a good time. So the games were teamed, volunteers from Detroit, volunteers from Fort Worth, and they're playing with a celebrity in town, a TV person, football coach, whatever, and we just did that all day.
One of the best opportunities for clubs is coming up in the winter of 2026, and that is the Winter Olympics. And, if any clubs are able to somehow manage to get themselves a foot in the door somewhere in advance of those Winter Olympics, it's a fantastic opportunity to just sort of like pop your membership up like really big fast and, get run events that generate some income. So I know that one of the things that we ran both at Potomac and at Dakota was we just brought people in. We had it was like 4 sheets. Okay, so then we brought in like 16 people every 10 minutes, and we only charged them $10. And it was just a station. They spent like 5 minutes at a station, and then they got to throw 1 rock the length of the sheet. And then they came off, and we, had all kinds of opportunities for them to come back for a Learn to Curl or whatever. Well, we made like $3,500 in 4 hours at the one club, and we made like almost 5,000 at Potomac in like 5 hours. We were just completely organized. People were just teaching one thing, making sure people were safe, and there's just different ways, but that was one of the fundraising things, and people actually appreciated that kind of stuff. They said it was like the perfect introduction to the sport, and we did get a lot of them back. So, but yeah, the Winter Olympics are coming up.
Kind of jumping back to Brad's comment about the $1 million and $250,000 per sheet. We've had a few questions come in specifically about that, Brad. So how much of the 1 million? There's a few parts here. How much of the 1 million was for rent or your land cost versus build out? What kinds of things were covered by the $250,000 per sheet? And then if you can just, I guess just people are looking for a breakdown of what those costs were. If you have a quick summary that you can share.
Oh yeah, so the $1 million was just for the build out. That's not the operational budget. That's strictly the build out. So that was getting, the space rearranged and set up for curling, putting walls up where they were needed, reconfiguring the area that would become the warm room, and then the actual ice equipment. So the chiller, the mats, and all the accessories that we needed for that, insulation and so forth, the heat mats. So that's the number to convert the space, which we're renting, from what it was before to a curling facility.
So that doesn't include any of your rent costs or anything as well?
No, those are operational costs. Those are a whole
Okay.
separate budget, and about 10 or 12 or 15 spreadsheets that drive that. Yeah, so the rent and utilities and all that is ongoing costs. So that $1 million was just the build out. And of course, if you can do it for less, then your cost per sheet is less. But I think these days that's probably not a number that's far off. Of course, it depends on what your space is too. If you have a lot of things you have to do to it to get it ready, then you're going to pay more.
And Brad, did I hear you right when you said that roughly you guys were around the $300,000 mark fundraising before at the point when you signed the lease?
Yeah, it was probably that, maybe even a little more. I think we'd secured maybe a curling organization loan at that time. But yeah, it was a substantial number, and it was 350,000, somewhere in there. The landlord won't talk to you if you don't have money in the bank. So you've got this fine line that you're following, which is I gotta go find the space, and I gotta find the space so I can figure out how much it's going to cost to build this thing out. I mean, the first space we found, our estimate was 700,000, and then we didn't find a suitable one. We couldn't get that one because they wouldn't negotiate the rent down enough to fit our budget. By the time we came around to another space a year later, after looking at probably 50 or 60 online and in person, the budget had gone up to $1 million. This happened during the period of COVID also, so there were a lot of things going on in there in terms of supply chain and all that. But in the end, yeah, I would say we probably had close to 300,000 in the bank, and it's a good thing we had it by that time, because the landlord would not have talked to us if we didn't have that.
Yeah.
Because they worry about you being stolen, of course.
Yeah. And along that line, there are places where commercial real estate is fairly empty. And there are some landlords out there that are willing to work with organizations like curling clubs. But again, you have to show that you're real, that you have a dedicated membership, and that because you're basically asking them to be an investor in your club. And so they're going to need to see some real numbers in terms of members, programs, and member involvement in finances.
So we're coming up on 6 o'clock my time. So we're coming up on an hour here. I have a couple more questions that I think we want to try to get through. If there's anything else, if everyone wants to stay on and keep asking, I'm fine with that. If our panelists have to leave and go do other things, I know it's getting late for some folks. That's fine too. We can try to get answers to you guys somehow. If you send me an email, I can try to email our panelists and get your response. But just to touch on the ones that I know I've missed, there's questions. I think this is mostly going to be for Sandra and Don, since Brad is still in that first year, but Nick wants to know, what was your membership when you started, and then after year one? So how much growth can you try to anticipate over that first year?
The first year in a dedicated club?
Yeah, when you opened dedicated doors, what was your membership? And then a year later, how much has that changed?
Okay, so I know that with Dakota, they were somewhere around, that club had been around in arenas for a while, and they had fluctuated anywhere from 60 to 160 members in an arena. And I think that we were somewhere around 60 when we moved into the building, and then we went up to the first year around 160, 100 and 80. That was the first year. And then we popped up a bit after that, over 200. So, and I know that Potomac was only like around, they were about the same, about 50 members in an arena. But then they went into their building. This was before I was with them, but they went into their building right before it was like the 2006 Olympics. And they went from like 50 members up to like almost 300 that first year because of the Olympics.
Don, I know you've had a
Yeah.
pretty significant jump, more than tripling in the first year.
Yeah, so we were at one point in the arena, I think, before the COVID happened there, we were 160 or 170 curling 3 nights a week. And then we went down, and we were right around 100 when we moved from the arena to dedicated. And at the end of that first year, what we did, and looking back, there was a little tug of war on this one, was required membership, but we had a first year special membership effort or whatever, something like that. So that people came in that first year, we gave them a bonus membership special or whatever. The membership was for $450 or something like that at the end of our first thing. And then so that was January we started. We were about $450 in May, and then the following year we're still north of 400. So yeah, so it's that's where we're at, 400 for something, somewhere in there.
Then I have one more question that was specifically addressed to Brad that I think is probably going to be really interesting for a lot of people. What methods did you find were the most successful for getting support from the community as a club that started as an arena in an area? This is, I think the interesting part, in an area that's not traditionally familiar with curling. Were there types of advertising that were more effective than others? Like how did you start from scratch where people don't traditionally curl? Because I know there's a lot of growth in a lot of our southern states and western states where there hasn't been traditionally that community.
Yeah, we advertise it as a winter sport that's best played in the summer because you can beat the heat. Which actually, I say that tongue in cheek, but that is part of our promotion. We've had one advantage, which is the community did get exposed multiple times to high-end curling with the Continental Cup and the Men's World Championships that came here. So that helped a little bit. That kind of raised the awareness. What we've been finding, though, is people, like even in just the last year or two, and maybe others are finding this too, people know more about curling than they used to. And, it used to be just the Olympics. Okay, now we've seen it on the Olympics. And then it kind of goes away. But we're finding that people know more about curling. And part of our advantage, I think, is that we've got a fairly good sized Canadian population that are snowbirds. So that's something that's helped also. And of course, they talk to friends and they know curling very well, being from Canada. And then the rest of it's really just been exposure, word of mouth, doing the social media and doing the PR. I don't know that there's any magic to any of that, but that's what's been working here for us.
So I want to sneak in one last question for Don, because I've also been meaning to ask this myself and keep forgetting. But you've mentioned that you have been sitting down with the members of the community who would go out and bring in more interest and more community to the club. What kinds of roles in the community do those people have? Like, who are you looking for these beers up at the bar at the arena?
So some of them were some of the people that had relationships with people that we would want to be part of. So, I mean, the town we live in is it's not a big town, and people kind of know what's going on. But we have, people with wealth, people that have finances, people that had the wherewithal to, if they wanted to, they could buy the whole damn club for us. I mean, that, we'll ask them first. They won't, but what they'll do is they'll ask their friends. So here's kind of what I learned, and maybe this is just my experience, or maybe this is how it happens all over the place. The first guy that we brought in, he founded a little company called US Robotics. So he's doing okay. He said, "This is amazing. This is what we need in our community to get through the winters. Our community is changing, and that the population is changing. Winter sports aren't what they used to be. Skiing isn't. It's becoming less of a deal. And this is a community game." So that's what attracted it to him. It's a community game. And so the question was to him, because I knew this, if we could get this one guy to kind of chat, be good. Who should we talk to that needs to see this? And he gave us a laundry list of people that we should talk to, phone numbers, and he even made some of the connections. Hey, this is Don Pichet, his sister Kara. They're doing the curling thing out there at Center Ice. You should check it out. Boom, boom, boom. And then he would always let us know, let them know that I'm supporting you financially. And so the question after we would bring these next group of people in, so is he supporting you financially? Yeah. So those people wanted to make sure they stayed on the good side of the big fish by saying, okay, then we're in too. And then the question to them was, so who do you think we should talk to about this place? Who think they would find value? And this just kind of snowballed. And then it became, we want to get asked to come out there and see this game. And the phone calls came to us. Is there a chance I can come out there and watch that curling thing you guys do at the hockey rink there? We'll see. We figured it out. So it kind of went in a circle. Who in your community would you like to sit down with and watch people curl on your arena ice for an hour and a half, have a beer with them, tell them the story about curling. Don't tell them about takeouts and double throwbacks or roll, whatever they're called. Just talk about curling and talk about the people that are on the ice, who they are, what they do, how they found this place, and the relationships that are being built, and they will be into it. They may or may not love the game. That doesn't matter. What they love is the relationships. And that's what, in my opinion, that's what people play the game for. Except for the elite, and they still do. They were in Traverse City, and they wouldn't leave the bar at night to go do push-ups, and they stand around and had some cold beers. That's what they did. So anyway, I hope that helps Jeremy with that question. Who do you want? Are you all for-profit or nonprofit? We are a not-for-profit organization.
So does that mean that you're a 501c3?
We're a 501c3, but we are a business that makes money. We get paid for what we do. Okay,
Yeah,
so we have to make it. We act like we make a profit. We have to make a profit, but we are a 501c3. Yes, thank you for that clarification. Yeah, I think that's another thing. This is not a charity because we're not taxed in the same way a regular business is. It doesn't mean we do it for free.
Right. And I think that's a common misunderstanding sometimes around nonprofits.
Yeah. That means it should be free, right? Yeah.
Right.
No. So.
Yeah. And to that point, we're also obviously a 501c3, but we don't, nonprofits operate through donations, basically. And to Don's point, we operate it like a business, strictly as a business, as though we're trying to make a profit, which we need to. do what we're doing.
It's just that profit isn't being paid out to stakeholders. It's going back into running the organization.
Right. Exactly. Yeah,
So-
you're not a nonprofit in the traditional sense.
Yeah, which somebody asked me a question, and I not sure I can answer this, but it's worth digging in. So I'm a member, and if I paid my $750 this year, is that tax deductible? I don't think so, but
Okay, so we're a little over an hour here. I know I missed some questions in there, and I'm sorry about that. I can try to, if you send me emails, I can try to get answers for you. But I want to say one more thing before we say goodbye, unless everybody really wants to stay on. That we have, since this is an arena, a lot of arena participants here, I wanted to go ahead and plug the arena qualifying bonspiel for this year's nationals. It'll be held at the Lacrosse Curling Club in La Crosse, Wisconsin. I don't have a link handy. Hopefully somebody can drop it in the chat, but I know we're just trying to help get the word out about that and make sure that Lacrosse is filling that bonspiel. Are there any last minute questions, or do you guys want to stay on? That Jane's got her hand up.
And this is one of 2 sessions, right? So you're going to have a follow-up session. So we want to talk about that as well.
Thank you, Jane. Yes. So this is one of 2 sessions. This session was intended, and I think we did a pretty good job here of staying on. This is the startup process for getting to that transition. So how do you do the fundraising and member building and forecasting? Our next session is going to be more focused on building concerns and how do you execute on that financial forecast that you built and that membership forecast that you built, and actually kind of the nuts and bolts of growing into that building that you have now secured. So yeah, that'll be a different phase of the discussion. So we're planning that for sometime late July. I don't have a date quite yet, but I'll be sending it out. We'll be using similar means. I'll notify all the clubs in my monthly email to club membership or to club leadership, and we'll post it on Facebook and our website and the virtual education page, where the recording for this will be on the virtual education page as well. Sorry. I heard somebody talking.
Yeah, if I could just pipe in for a sec here. Than Tibbetts from Broomfitters, Brooklyn Curling Club, and I started Positive Ice. If you guys are not on Positive Ice, haven't seen the podcast, it's on one of those platforms. I don't know how that all stuff works, but we do have a Facebook page, Positive Ice. It's a group. Join the group. We're just trying to find more ways to dialogue than these types of things, and ways to archive them. So I know, Brad, I think Dan's probably reached out to you to let's talk, have a podcast about the Las Vegas experience, and we are incrementally talking to clubs around the country on how to do this. And nobody has all the answers, and every situation is unique, but the principles are the same. And we're trying to identify those principles. We all have little niches, and my little niche is, building community, building relationships. That's my space. And, but check out that Positive Ice, get on the Facebook group, and let's keep the conversation going there.
Okay. Unless anybody else has any last minute things, I want to go ahead and say thank you so much to everyone who came, all of the questions. I think we had some really good discussions tonight, and especially thank you to Sandra, Don, and Brad. Yeah, and let me know if you have ideas for future topics that you want to talk about, and I will hopefully see you all next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren.
Bye, everyone.